The gun was pointed straight at my chest. I could see Karen's hands shaking, her knuckles white from gripping the handle too tight. My heart slammed against my ribs, every muscle in my body frozen, my mind trying to make sense of what was happening. Just a few weeks ago, she was nothing more than a nosy neighbor, the kind that glared over hedges and complained about fence height. Now, she was standing in my driveway, wild-eyed, yelling about how this house was hers, how I had stolen it from her, how I had left her no choice. The world around me blurred, the distant hum of my landscaper's equipment, the neighbors peeking from their porches, the soft rustling of leaves in the wind. It all felt muted, insignificant, drowned out by the weight of the moment. Karen's finger twitched near the trigger, and for the first time in my life, I genuinely wondered if this was how it ended. All because of a house. All because of a woman too insane to accept reality. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Moving into my first home was supposed to be a dream, a milestone, the kind of thing you work for years to achieve. And in the beginning, it was perfect. The house had everything I wanted: old charm, a solid structure, a backyard that could be transformed into something beautiful. It was nestled in a quiet neighborhood where the homes had character, unlike the modern cookie-cutter houses I had always hated. The day I signed the papers, I had stood on the porch, admiring the way the afternoon sun kissed the roof, feeling that deep satisfaction of knowing I had worked hard for something that was finally mine. The previous owner, an elderly woman named Barbara, had kept the place in good shape but hadn't done much updating, which meant I had plenty of plans. Landscaping, repainting, maybe even knocking down a wall to open up the kitchen. It was going to be a fresh start, a new chapter. What I hadn't accounted for was Karen. I met her within hours of moving in. She appeared at my doorstep like she had been waiting, arms crossed, a fake smile plastered across her face. She introduced herself in that overly sweet tone that didn't quite mask the judgment lurking beneath. At first, I thought she was just one of those old-school neighbors who didn't like change, the type who still called people whippersnappers, and reminisced about the good old days when kids rode their bikes instead of staring at phones. But something about the way she lingered, the way her eyes darted around my house like she was taking inventory, put me on edge. She didn't welcome me to the neighborhood. She didn't ask about my plans or offer any friendly advice. Instead, she told me, flat out, without a hint of humor, that Barbara had always said the house would go to her one day. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. From that moment, Karen made it clear that she wasn't happy about my presence. The passive-aggressive comments started immediately. Barbara never would have changed that, she would say whenever I so much as moved a chair on the porch. That house has a history, you know. It's meant to stay the way it was. At first, I ignored her. Everyone has that one weird neighbor, right? The type that thinks they own the entire block just because they've lived there the longest. But Karen wasn't just weird. She was relentless. The moment the renovation work began, she escalated. It started with minor inconveniences, blocking my contractor's trucks by parking her car in the middle of the street, standing outside with her arms crossed like a guard dog, making exaggerated sighs loud enough for everyone to hear. Then came the questions disguised as accusations. "Are you sure you have permits for this?" she would ask, leaning over my fence. You know, Barbara would never have approved of that color. It was almost amusing, in a way, how obsessed she was with a house that had never belonged to her. But it stopped being funny when she started interfering. One morning, I came outside to find her arguing with my landscapers, insisting that the tree they were about to trim was a historical landmark. It wasn't. It was dead and leaning at a dangerous angle, something my insurance company had advised me to remove. "You can't cut it down," she shrieked, stepping between the workers and the tree like some kind of eco-warrior on a mission. "This tree has been here longer than you have. It's part of the neighborhood's soul." "Karen, it's rotting," I said, exasperated. "If it falls, it could kill someone." "Then let nature take its course," she snapped, as if gravity and lawsuits weren't real things. I had to physically escort her off my property that day. It wasn't easy. Karen had a way of acting like she belonged everywhere, like she had authority in places she didn't. She left, but not before giving me a long, hard stare and muttering, "You'll regret this." A week later, I found her in my backyard. Not at the fence, not in her own yard peeking over, but in my actual backyard, crouched near my garden with her phone out, snapping pictures of the work being done. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded, heart pounding. "Gathering evidence," she said smugly, standing up and dusting off her hands. "You're ruining this property. People have a right to know." "You're trespassing," I shot back. She tilted her head, as if the concept of property lines was something new to her. "I was just looking," she said, feigning innocence. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Karen, if I catch you on my property again, I'm calling the police." She gasped like I had slapped her. "You wouldn't dare." "Watch me." That should have been the end of it. A normal person would have taken the hint, backed off, maybe muttered something about neighborhood friendliness and grudgingly accepted reality. But Karen wasn't normal. She didn't stop. She didn't back off. She doubled down. It was the following night that I found the note. A single sheet of paper, slipped under my door in the dead of night. The handwriting was jagged, like someone had written it in a fit of rage. "This house doesn't belong to you. Leave before you regret it." I read it twice, a strange chill creeping down my spine. My first instinct was to laugh. This was Karen, after all. The same woman who thought a dead tree was a historic landmark. But something about the note, about the way it had been delivered, unsettled me. I showed it to my neighbors, Bob and Caitlin, the couple who lived across the street. Bob let out a low whistle. "She's off her rocker, man. I'd get some cameras if I were you." So I did. Security cameras, motion lights, the whole setup. I figured it would be enough to make her back off, to remind her that this wasn't some game. I had no idea that I had just given her another reason to escalate. Because Karen wasn't just going to stop at warnings. She wasn't just going to glare at me from across the street or make idle threats. Karen was going to take this to a level I never could have predicted. The next morning, I woke up to find all 4 of my car tires slashed. Not 1, not 2, but all 4, as if whoever did it wanted to make sure I was completely stranded. The realization hit me immediately. This wasn't some random act of vandalism, not in this quiet neighborhood where people left their doors unlocked and waved at each other from their driveways. No, this was deliberate. This was Karen. I felt a rush of anger so strong that for a moment I couldn't even think straight. I stormed back inside, yanked my phone off the counter, and pulled up the security footage. There she was, crouching by my car in the middle of the night, a knife in her hand, slashing one tire after another with quick, precise movements. When she was done, she stood up, wiped her hands on her pants like she had just finished gardening, and walked back to her house as if she hadn't just committed a crime. I stared at the footage, barely able to believe what I was seeing. She was so casual about it, so utterly unbothered, like she thought she had every right to do what she just did. I immediately called the police, my hands shaking with rage. By the time the officer arrived, I had the footage ready on my phone, eager to shove it in his face and demand that they do something. But as soon as he saw it, he let out a sigh, rubbing his temple like he had already dealt with Karen 100 times before. "Yeah, that's not enough to arrest her," he said, handing my phone back to me. I blinked. "What do you mean it's not enough? She's right there. That's literally her, holding the knife, slashing my tires." He gave me the kind of look people give toddlers when they don't understand why they can't eat candy for dinner. We can't see her face clearly in the footage. All we see is a person. Could be anyone. Are you kidding me? Who else would it be? He shrugged. You'd be surprised how tricky these things can get in court. Even if we brought her in, she'd just deny it. So what? She gets to do whatever she wants. I'd recommend filing a report, installing more cameras, and maybe getting a protective order if she keeps harassing you. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab him by the collar and shake him until he understood that a woman like Karen didn't stop. She wouldn't see this as a warning. She would see it as a victory. But what choice did I have? I filed the report, called a tow truck, and spent half my day getting my tires replaced. And just as I predicted, when Karen saw the police leave without arresting her, she had the audacity to stand on her porch and smile at me like she had just won a game I didn't even know we were playing. I should have known that wasn't the end. The next few days, she ramped up her insanity, testing how far she could push before I snapped. I caught her whispering to neighbors, pointing at my house like she was telling them some dramatic tale of how I was destroying a piece of history. She started spreading rumors that I was violating zoning laws, calling the city to report false code violations. Inspectors showed up at my door more than once, confused as to why they had been sent when everything was perfectly legal. One night, I woke up to the sound of banging. Groggy, disoriented, I stumbled to my front door and yanked it open, expecting to see a contractor who had come too early. Instead, I found Karen standing there, her eyes wild, her breathing heavy. "You need to stop," she hissed. "You're ruining everything." I was too stunned to speak. It was 3 a.m. She was standing on my porch in her nightgown, her hair a mess, like she had been up all night stewing in her delusions. "Karen, go home," I said, barely keeping my voice steady. "This house was supposed to be mine," she snapped, her voice shaking with barely contained rage. "Barbara told me. She promised. She didn't. Her family sold it to me. She lied to them." Karen screamed, stomping her foot like a child throwing a tantrum. "She told me, not them. She told me she wanted me to have it." I took a slow, deep breath, resisting the urge to grab my phone and call the police right then and there. "Karen, you need to leave my property. You don't deserve this house," she spat. "You don't understand its history. You don't appreciate it the way I do. You're just ruining it." "I'm improving it," I shot back. "And it's mine, Karen. Nothing you say or do is going to change that." Her face twisted into something ugly, something almost inhuman, like she couldn't process the fact that I wasn't giving in. Then, without another word, she turned and stormed back to her house, slamming her door so hard I could feel the vibration from where I stood. I barely got any sleep after that, and the next morning I installed more security cameras, more motion lights, even set up alerts on my phone so I would be notified the second she stepped foot on my property again. But I should have known that Karen wasn't going to be deterred by something as simple as surveillance. If anything, it only seemed to fuel her obsession. That evening, I caught her sneaking into my backyard again, this time with a can of spray paint in her hand. I sprinted outside before she could do any damage, my blood boiling. "Karen, what the hell do you think you're doing?" She jumped like she hadn't expected to be caught, her eyes darting around like she was trying to come up with an excuse. "I was just making sure you weren't damaging the original exterior paint." "With spray paint," I barked. Her eyes flickered with something, guilt, maybe, or frustration that she had been caught. "You don't deserve this house," she muttered. "You'll see. You'll regret it." That was the second time she had said those exact words. I had no idea what she meant, but I knew one thing. Karen wasn't done. She was just getting started. I should have known Karen wouldn't stop until things escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. The threats, the sabotage, the stalking. It was all leading up to something bigger, something more dangerous, but even then I never thought she would go as far as she did. It was a Saturday afternoon, the kind of day that should have been peaceful, the kind where the sun was shining, the air smelled like fresh-cut grass, and I should have been relaxing on my porch with a drink in my hand, enjoying the progress of my renovations. Instead, I was standing in my driveway, watching my landscapers put the finishing touches on the yard, when I heard the unmistakable sound of Karen's voice, shrill and furious, slicing through the air like nails on a chalkboard. I turned just in time to see her storming toward me from across her yard, her face twisted in rage, her entire body trembling like she had finally reached her breaking point. My stomach dropped when I saw what was in her hand. A gun. My brain struggled to process what I was seeing, every part of me locking up with shock and disbelief. This wasn't just Karen being a nuisance. This wasn't another ridiculous complaint or petty act of vandalism. This was something else entirely. This was real danger. She stopped a few feet away, lifting the gun just enough to make sure I saw it, her chest rising and falling in erratic, frantic breaths. My workers froze, their tools clattering to the ground as they backed away slowly, whispering to each other in alarm. Bob and Caitlin, who had been chatting with me just moments before, exchanged panicked glances before taking several cautious steps back. My own breath caught in my throat, my pulse hammering so hard I could feel it in my skull. Karen's eyes were wild, filled with something far beyond anger, something closer to desperation, to madness, to a complete detachment from reality. "You stole my house," she shrieked, her voice breaking with emotion, her grip tightening around the gun. "It was mine. It was supposed to be mine." My mouth was dry, my heart pounding against my ribs like it was trying to escape. "Karen, put the gun down," I said as calmly as I could, lifting my hands slightly, trying not to make any sudden movements. "You don't want to do this. You don't understand," she snapped, her voice trembling. "Barbara promised it to me. She lied to you. She lied to everyone. This house belongs to me." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay as still as possible, trying to keep my voice even despite the terror clawing at my chest. "Karen, that's not true. Her family sold it to me. There was no promise. There was never any deal." She shook her head violently, her entire body trembling. "You're lying. You're all lying. I've had to sit here and watch you destroy everything, ruin everything. You don't deserve it." I clenched my jaw, every muscle in my body tensed, my eyes locked on the gun. I didn't know what she planned to do, if she was just trying to scare me or if she had truly lost all reason, but either way, I wasn't about to take any chances. The entire street had gone eerily silent, neighbors peering out from behind their curtains, frozen in disbelief. It felt like time had slowed, like the world had narrowed down to just me and her, to this single moment that could change everything. "Karen, please, listen to me," I said, forcing myself to take a careful step forward. "This isn't the way. You don't want to do this." Her grip on the gun wavered slightly, just for a second, but then she steadied herself, lifting it again, her hands shaking so badly that I couldn't tell if she even had control over where it was pointing. Maybe she hadn't thought this through. Maybe she hadn't expected to actually go this far. I took a slow breath, trying to keep my voice calm, trying to keep the situation from spiraling into something irreversible. "If you put the gun down now, I promise we can talk about this. But you have to put it down. You have to trust me." Karen's eyes darted around, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. I could see the hesitation, the cracks forming in whatever fantasy she had built in her mind. And then, in the distance, the sound of sirens. Someone had called the police. She heard it too. Her head snapped toward the noise, her body tensing as she realized she was running out of time, that this was all about to end. That split second of distraction was all it took. One of the landscapers, a guy named Miguel, moved fast, faster than I even had time to process. He lunged forward, knocking into her, sending both of them crashing to the ground. The gun flew from her hands, skidding across the pavement. I didn't even think. I ran. I grabbed the gun before she could, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. Karen screamed, thrashing beneath Miguel, but he held her down, his face set in a grim determination. Within seconds, the police cars screeched to a stop in front of my house, officers pouring out, weapons drawn, shouting for everyone to stay back. I dropped the gun immediately, raising my hands, stepping away as the officers swarmed in, securing the weapon, pinning Karen to the ground, cuffing her hands behind her back as she screamed and kicked like a wild animal. "This is my house," she shrieked, her voice raw with rage and desperation. "He stole it from me. He stole it. You have to believe me." One of the officers gave me a quick look. "Do you have proof of ownership?" I nodded quickly, motioning toward the house. "Inside in my office. I have everything. The deed, the sale contract." He nodded back, his expression tight, and turned his attention to Karen. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for brandishing a firearm, making criminal threats, and trespassing." Karen's wailing turned into incoherent sobs, her body shaking so violently that the officers had to drag her toward the squad car. Even as they shoved her inside, she kept screaming, kept rambling about how I had ruined everything, how Barbara had promised her the house, how none of this was fair. And then, just like that, she was gone. The officers took my statement, took statements from my workers, from Bob and Caitlin, from the other neighbors who had seen everything. They reviewed the security footage, the vandalism reports, the threats, the note she had left under my door, and they pieced it all together. Karen had been unraveling for weeks, maybe longer, and I had just been the final trigger that sent her completely over the edge. In the end, she was charged with multiple felonies, including assault with a deadly weapon, vandalism, and harassment. She was denied bail. The judge ruled her a danger to the community, and from what I heard, she was looking at years in prison. The relief that washed over me when it was all over was almost overwhelming. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again, like I could walk outside without having to constantly look over my shoulder. The renovations continued, uninterrupted this time, and when they were finally finished, I stood on my newly built deck, looking out at the house, at the yard, at everything I had worked so hard for, and I knew it had all been worth it. Karen had tried everything to take this place from me. She had lied, threatened, vandalized, and even pulled a gun. But in the end, the house was still mine. She had lost, and that, more than anything, was the greatest victory of all.